Hey guys, No Zoop for you here, and today's topic is a little highly charged. Just a little. You can probably guess that by the title though, but I really want to give some thoughts about stats, WTR, and the works. Before I dive into that though, you're watching some gameplay of Hentai Champion. I happened to be in a round with him and watched as he basically single-handedly won the round for us with some late game heroics. It really was a great match. I didn't have the greatest round, but he carried us, so kudos to him. Now, back to the topic at hand. WTR is not an accurate measurement of skill. Yes, this topic is a minefield. Before I start, I just want everyone to know I respect all players of all skill levels. I hold no bias against any player. I also understand some of you care about your stats. That's perfectly fine. We all do to some degree. I don't mind that you want your stats to be good. Not a problem with that at all. Go for it. Watching your own stats is actually a great way to monitor your growth as a player and if you're in fact improving. I like my stats to be good even, so there's that too. With that being said, WTR in particular is malarkey. It's a flawed system, and right now it is nothing more than a way for other players to stat shame. It's penile ranking at its most basic form. And I detest players who are willing to go out and blatantly stat shame. And there's plenty who do that. If you want a unicum or super unicum WTR, I'll tell you how to do it at the end of this commentary. If you have even average skill, with enough work, you can boost your WTR. There is a method, and that is also a very large fault with WTR, but I'll get into that later. The issue with WTR is that it's a really poor way to judge a player's actual skill. WTR doesn't tell the full story. It is deeply flawed. First and foremost, it doesn't encourage team play. There are other games with this particular issue. Look at Battlefield or Call of Duty. Stats and even XP to some degree encourage solo play. Everyone in those games cares about their kill-death ratio. The higher the better. Everyone looks at awe with the player who has a 20-1 KD ratio. What do they do for the team though? Are they sniping from a rock? How many caps do they have? You know, the things that actually help you win. Getting out there and helping the team. Now let's look at World of Warships. The biggest problem with WTR is that it doesn't account for capping. Why do I have an issue with this? Because capping means you're helping your team win. For the longest time I made the mistake of equating XP and WTR. Many players do. That's not the case, and they have nothing to do with each other. While XP might take into account your caps, WTR does not. You can play as a DD, have 4 solo caps, top the leaderboard, and guess what? You're a poor player because you did minimal damage. You didn't get any frags either. Yeah, you won, so maybe your WTR boosts you to an average player. Great, right? So how is that fair to any player? You're helping your team win, you're constantly topping the leaderboards, but you aren't even unicum. Wonky, isn't it? That's because of the way WTR is set up. WTR measures how much damage you do compared to other players in the same ship. It also measures how many kills you get compared to other players in the same ship. And lastly, WTR measures how often you win. That's it. Not how many caps, not how many players you can seal, not how many ships you spot. None of the teamwork aspects of the game are counted in WTR. You can argue that sinking a ship is teamwork, but we all know there are players out there that go carrier hunting to farm damage. I'll use my own stats as an example. I, for the longest time, mained battleships. I continually finished top 3 on the leaderboards. However, while I felt I was a great battleship player based upon how I finished in specific matches, I wasn't unicum. Why? I won a lot, 60% or higher. Again, I did massive damage. However, I don't get a lot of frags in battleships. Lower than average, actually. Meanwhile, in destroyers, I have a higher WTR. My win-loss isn't as good, especially on some ships. But still, I play unicum in those few DDs that I have less than a 50% win rate in. Why is my WTR so good, though? I get on average more frags and damage than other players in those ships. I'm penalized for playing good in a BB, and rewarded in a DD for subpar play in my opinion for not getting a good win-loss ratio. That's a huge problem with WTR. And that brings me to another point. Win-loss is a much better barometer of skill than WTR, at least in my opinion. Luck will only take a player so far. If a player can score above a 55% win rate playing mostly solo, that's not luck, and it's a direct reflection of the skill of that player. Not just farming damage, but doing the things necessary to help their team win. I mentioned earlier that WTR can be fudged. I'd say even an average player can boost their WTR to unicum with enough effort. You might have to play only one ship type, but if you care enough or want it enough, it can be done. Kind of the same as even the worst player can make it to rank 1 eventually in ranked gameplay. It might take time, but it can be done. So how do you do it? It's pretty simple actually. Go to one of the stat tracking sites and look for a ship with very low average damage and frags. Destroyers are an excellent way to farm WTR. Ognavoy and Loyang have very low average damage right now at about 26,000 average damage. Choose a ship like that to farm damage with. Also, avoid capping. What? Yes, I'm telling you how to boost your WTR. To do that, you have to be selfish. Don't be a team player. Ignore caps. Caps will get you focused and sunk, and they do nothing for your WTR. Focus on damage only. Smoke only yourself and not the team so you can sit in it and farm even more damage. Remember, as long as you do better than average, you're on your way to boosting your WTR. Damage is only one key to the equation. You need frags, so look for low-hanging fruit. That is, ships with low hit points. Actually, wait for your team to do all the work. Then when the ship is around 1000 HP, go in for the kill. I believe this is called kill stealing. Yep, that will help you boost your WTR. The last thing, the win ratio might be harder to fudge, but it's not necessary as long as your damage done and frags are decently above average. If you do want to boost your win-loss ratio, play in a division with better players and ride their coattails. Actually, there's really nothing wrong with that either way. So there you have it. That's how you boost your WTR. And no, I don't support doing this at the expense of helping your team. I don't like selfish play. In fact, I'd much rather play with a below average player trying to help his team than a player out for themselves. Personally, I play really well in Kiev. At a mere 35,000 average damage, I easily double that most rounds. As a result, I have a unicum WTR in that ship. I also get a lot of frags. But, what I'm most proud of though, I cap a lot in that ship. It's not unusual for me to have at least 2 or 3 solo caps in the Kiev. To me, that is far more important, and sadly, it means nothing in the overall WTR. I have another word of caution for you out there. There are mods that show the WTR for players in-game. If it were me, I would never use them. Never underestimate the enemy, or your teammates for that matter. While you might be so inclined to go after that battleship with the super unicum WTR, the bigger threat might be that cruiser destroyer with the average WTR that just so happens to solo cap in domination or has a knack for continually capping in standard battle while no one's watching. WTR doesn't tell you who the biggest threat is. It can be deceiving. Now, as much as it sounds like I'm pooping on WTR, it's important to remember one very important fact with WTR. WTR is the way it is because these are the only stats available to track. You can't track caps, you can't track things like that. So WTR does the best with what it has. Just want to throw that out there in WTR's defense. Now don't get me wrong, WTR isn't complete BS, and a great player is a great player. Some players have a high WTR and are team players. They're well-rounded. They likely have much higher WTR if the teamwork aspects actually mattered. Things like capping, that actually went into WTR. The problem is that WTR is fundamentally flawed, and I personally wouldn't use it in any way, shape, or form to judge another player. Of course, we shouldn't be judging other players in the first place. Nothing irks me more than when a good player pulls the potato card on other players. Guys, there's no money on the line in this game. This will never be an esport game. Yeah, I get that. You want to do good, you want to win. Everyone does. That's no different from this game to Overwatch, to Battlefield, to Call of Duty, to Halo, or whatever else. People like to win. People like their stats to look good, or at least the majority do. But then there are also some players that just want to go out, they want to have fun, and they don't care how they play. And World of Warships is more that game than it is not. It is a pub game. It really is. It's a public game where players of all skills come out, and they'll never match those skills equally. Matchmaker is just not created to do that. World of Warships takes things as a zero sum, and everybody is a 50% average when it goes into matchmaking. Is that right? You know, I don't know, but it would be too hard to do matchmaking based upon skill and or WTR, which, you know, I don't agree with. So guys, if you're playing regular pub matches for a competitive edge, you're not going to get it there. You're just not. But hopefully when clans come online, that'll be alleviated a little bit. Hopefully when clans come around, we'll have that competitive game mode where we can go out there and we don't have to worry about other players wrecking things. You know who you're playing with, you know your skills, you know what you do. So there you go. Maybe when clans come on board one day, you know, the players that want competitive will have competitive. But the bottom line is, guys, if you're looking for an esport, you're not going to get it here. And the more bottom line, the whole point of this is that WTR can be fudged completely. It's fundamentally flawed. It provides players with the perceived right to have more valid opinions than others, and that's it, right? We all know those players out there on Reddit or in the forums or elsewhere that because my WTR is above 2000, I have the right to say what I want to. Every other player with a lower WTR is just a potato. They know nothing about this game. Well, guys, I'll be honest with you. Just because someone is not the greatest at something doesn't mean you can't learn something from them. I mean, for example, look at sports. You know, and I've brought this up before. You look at someone like Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods, for the longest time, was considered the greatest golfer in the game. No one could beat him. Well, who does Tiger Woods go to when he needs a tweak on his swing? Who does he go to when he needs to fix something? Well, there's no better players out there than him, and that goes for teachers as well. You know, I think for a time he was going to Butch Harmon. And while Butch Harmon was on the PGA Tour and a good player himself, he was by no means an expert. I mean, he wasn't a super unicum golfer. I mean, he was a good golfer. He was a pro golfer, but it's not like he was Jack Nicklaus. So Tiger Woods would go to him. Why? Because Butch Harmon knew the fundamentals of the game. He knows how it needs to be played. You don't have to be an expert at World of Warships to know how to properly angle. Yeah, you might have trouble doing it when it comes down to it, but you still know the fundamentals. You know what it takes to be a good player. You know what you need to do to be a good player. And some players are better able to actually translate that into the game. Your best players out there, phenomenal. However, some of those great players might not be good teachers. And that's just the way it is. You know, that's the way it is on YouTube, that's the way it is in the forums and everywhere. You've got some people that can do it all. You've got some very phenomenal players out there that are just amazing. They can go out there, play unicum every single time. I mean, iChase, look at iChase. He's been around forever. Super unicum player, but he's also a master teacher. He is just masterful at teaching. And that's the way it is. Then there's some player that have iChase's level of gameplay and even better, and you know, if they go out and try and teach, it's like listening to the most boring person in the world, or Ben Stein. It's like you're listening to Ben Stein, you know, you're up there, Bueller. That's just the way it is. Not every great player is a great teacher, and not every great teacher is a great player. But still, everybody has something valid to give to this game. Everybody has a valid opinion. Even poor players out there know when something is right or when something's wrong. And they especially know when something's not fun. And for them, getting beat up on continually is not fun. Being called potatoes by players that probably make less money than them in real life, or, you know, sit in their mother's basement, is not fun. A lot of the players in this game, again, are in their 40s. Average age, I think, was 42. That is an older crowd, a more seasoned crowd. and hopefully a more mature crowd. So just remember that when you're out there playing. Just remember the other guy. Remember the other girl. Remember the person on that other side. You know, they might not necessarily be you or in your situation. You know, they might be the married father or mother who has 20 minutes to get in and get a game, and while they can do extremely phenomenal one game, they just don't have the time to get the consistency down to be a unicum player every single time they go out. I mean, hell, I have stretches where, like this past week, I just moved into a new house. I got one game in. One single game. It was in a cabbie, and I went out and played at a super unicum level in that one game. Of course, that's the norm for the cabbie, right? You can just go out and get Witherer and Confederate every time, so no big deal, right? Exactly. But that was my one game. I could have just as easily gone out in a Missouri or some other battleship and done poorly. Could have gotten detonated in the first 5 minutes and tanked my WTR. Does that mean I'm a bad player overall? No, it doesn't. Just because someone has a couple bad games, it doesn't mean they're a bad player overall. And that's the problem with WTR. WTR doesn't take into account for life circumstances. It doesn't take into account the specific game you played in or the circumstances of that game. Whether or not you sacrificed and ate 10 torpedoes in your Yamato so that you could save 2 other ships that were sitting behind you. It just doesn't. You know, you might have sank, but you kept your team going. Those 2 ships that you saved went on to solo cap every other cap out there, and you all won. So who's the real hero? It's that Yamato, right? Yeah, he's going to look like a poor player overall in his WTR, but he went out there and saved the game. Because as a good player, he knew what he had to do to win. He was a team player, so that's why I don't like WTR. That's why I can't stand it, and I can't stand players that use it as a bully pulpit just to say that they're better. Because guys, you know what? Yeah, there's great players out there, but really it's a game. It's just a game. So, speaking of games, let's get back to this game and wrap things up. Again, this was just an absolute great battle. And as you can see right now, Hentai is pretty much down to 2 players on his team, or our team. He's still fighting. There's still 3 enemy ships out there right now. They have the cap advantage. They're definitely up on points, and they are getting very, very close to winning right now. Just 50 cap points away, so you know, he's got to make some moves very, very quick if he wants to win this game, and it's going to come in the shape and form of the Montana on the enemy team right now. He's going to start heading towards C cap. He's here with his teammate, the other remaining ship on our team, and here that Montana comes into view, and he really has only one option. He's got to sink this sucker. If he doesn't sink this sucker, he's in for trouble. So there's no time to stop in this smoke. So he's just going to barrel on past, and he's going to take on this Montana full throttle, which, you know, kind of daunting being the ship. He's got him on fire. And right now I really thought he was going to beach. I thought he was going to beach, but, you know, he pulled it out. You know, and here it comes right here. Montana's almost down to half health. Gets those torps out. Montana fires and straight through. Overpins, and here come the torps. 1 salvo, 2 salvo, gone. Takes the cap points back down to 920. So still in the game. 2 ships left. He's hurting though. Hentai Champion is really, really hurting, and he's got to take out this enemy shimmy. If he doesn't take out the enemy shimmy, we're in for a world of hurt, and it's almost over because they're up to 933 cap points again. So he does some clever stopping, some reversing, and he starts whittling away at the shimmy. Shimmy's on fire, and boom, he's gone. But Hentai is down to just about nothing yet. And this enemy battleship's coming right around the corner, and it's not good. His secondaries are going to go at him, but he sets him on fire. Sets him on fire, gets the reset right there before going down, and that fire is going to be key in this victory because it's going to allow the shimmy to do his thing, and there is not a lot of time left whatsoever. Cap points are running down. The shimmy launches a full salvo of torps right here. You can see them headed right towards the enemy, and again, time is just getting less and less, and you know, the battleship's starting to turn out, so it wasn't certain we were going to win, but these are going to hit it With just a few seconds left, game, set, match victory. Wonderful gameplay by Hentai Champion.